Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have another very special guest. If you listened to last week's, we had his wife Rachel on the show, and today we have Jonathan. He is a EMT in the U.S., and I'm going to let him, as usual, tell us a bit about himself and how he got into being an EMT and where he is and what he does. But this is real important. We're getting first responders that are actually coming on and actually talking to us and letting us know what it's like out there and how it actually is, going through the traumas of actually seeing the stuff that, as I say, none of us should ever have to see. And they're putting their lives on the line. So yeah, it's an honor, Jonathan. I want to thank you again for being on the show. And tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. First off, a little bit about me. I've been doing this for almost 8 years as an EMT on an ambulance. I've also got 5 years experience as a firefighter. A little bit about where I work. I know some people want to know, well, do you work in an ambulance service that only does 5 calls a year, or do you do a lot? My ambulance service does about 100,000 emergency calls a year.
Wow.
So we're not super small, but we're not super large. There are places that do more. Our service area, we cover about 500,000 people.
Mm.
We have everything from a metropolitan area down to farms and forests, and we have a mountain that we always have hikers that get stranded on. It's kind of crazy. So it wide range of area that we cover and things that we deal with. But I got my start kind of earlier in life. My dad was an emergency room doctor. Before that, he was a rescue medic for the Air Force and here in the States, and was also a civilian paramedic on the side for some extra money. And he kind of got tired of that after about 13 years and became an emergency room doctor because he felt like he wanted to do more. And I kind of wanted to follow in his footsteps and make him proud. So in 2009, I decided, hey, I'm going to try to do this a little bit, make dad, proud of me. And I didn't take it serious and started school and dropped out of it and ended up doing odd jobs, working manual labor. And kind of from there, got laid off from my job because of budget cuts, but got back into it because I didn't know where else to turn. I was like, oh, I did it once, I can do it again. And, just how it is, life rolls. And, a lot of people talk about it being a calling. When I first started, I didn't see it as a calling. Yeah. It was just a job. It's just something I could, hey, I get a paycheck and I get to drive fast with lights and sirens. This is great. What better way to make some money, right?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people out there that can relate to that. They join the first responders like, sweet, I get to drive fast legally, I get to turn lights on, I get an adrenaline rush. Sweet, let's go do it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what I did. The company I got hired with, they had an in-house training program. So I got certified and, got training as an EMT, and really my whole first year was just, so new and exciting. I mean, how do you get burned out when everything's new and exciting? It's like, oh man, we get to go on somebody with a toothache. This is awesome. I mean, you never know. Everything was cool.
That first year to year and a half, sometimes for some people it's 2 years. It is like, it's just the thrill, you turn up to work early, it's just like, yeah, let's just go do it.
Your boots are extra shiny, everything looks good. Your uniform is crisp. And I mean, you can't wait to go to work. You're trying to go when on your off days, you're calling them up. Hey, can I do anything? You got any extra shifts? I mean, my whole first year was great. I mean, yeah, I had some crazy calls, but that was what made it more exciting for me, that first year. But then my second year, things kind of got a little crazy. So one day before my birthday, April 27th, this is 2014, I was actually sitting at home getting ready for my birthday, and tornado sirens started going off in our neighborhood. And I was like, oh, this is not good. Uh, so I turned on the news and listening, and they were talking about this big tornado coming through our area, and it was destroying communities. And I was like, uh-oh. So I contacted a supervisor at work, and he said, we need all available hands on deck. So I was like, all right, I'm going to drive up there in my Jeep and just get up there on my own. So got to one of the communities that were devastated and realized that I was one of the first ones there.
Yeah.
We had one ambulance there, and that was it.
Wow.
So got out, and it was utter pandemonium, chaos. There were injured people everywhere. I mean, just total devastation. And me and another medic who showed up in his personal vehicle as well, just got triage bags to, tag the injured and the dead and everything, and just went into one community completely by ourselves, doing search and rescue operations for 5, almost 6 hours with just no help. There was no one.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is the tornado itself actually shut off the interstate because it went across. So it was hard for other ambulances to get up there. But we were triaging and tagging and dealing with search and rescue efforts for hours, and just exhausted, tired. The things we saw were crazy. Just at the end of that day, the end of that like 5 hours, sat down for like 5 minutes, and I was just beaten, just physically beaten, mentally beaten down, and sat there. And a supervisor walks up to me, and now there's 60 ambulances parked out there. It's like, well, we already did all the hard work for you guys. You showed up late to the party. But a supervisor walks up to me, and she looks at me and she goes, "Don't you have a shift you have to be at in a couple hours?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I do." So, my clothes are covered in mud and like dirt and blood. And so I just go home, change, and I'm back at work, and spent the whole next day doing more search and rescue stuff, doing more transports, and just treating people. And it was just chaos. That whole situation there was when I started to realize that there is this thing called burnout. There is something that, ooh, maybe this isn't as simple as I thought it was going to be. This job there's a little bit more seriousness to this than I thought.
Mm.
And some of the things, I wouldn't say I experienced PTSD or anything from that situation, but it did open my eyes up to, there's a lot more to this that I don't realize or don't understand yet.
Mm.
The big thing that affected me the most that year, though, was December of that same year. My partner and I got a typical call. It was nothing crazy. A guy had gotten shocked by an electrical outlet, and he wanted to go to the hospital, get checked out. Just nothing crazy. He was fine. So, we get him in the ambulance. We're driving to the hospital, and as we're driving to the hospital, actually, this is the crazy part, a police officer in his patrol unit pulled out in front of me. We were doing about 50 miles an hour. He just cut right in front of me, and didn't see me, wasn't paying attention. And we hit him, T-boned him, just all the way. The problem was my partner was in the back unrestrained, and was standing up.
Mm.
He was going to put oxygen mask on our patient, and it threw him forward at about 50 miles an hour, face first, into a refrigerator that we have for our medications. Almost killed him. After the accident occurred, I notified our dispatch, hey, we were in a bad wreck, we need help. And crawled out, tried to stand up, fell down. Realized that I'd messed up my knee, both my knees. Had completely dislocated my thumb, split it open, which was kind of crazy. Of all the things to, mess up in an accident, my thumb, I'm like, wow, okay. But crawled to the back of the ambulance, and there was my partner, who I assumed was lifeless. He had an open skull fracture, so you could see his brain. It was crazy call.
Yeah.
And for almost 15 minutes, I was by myself in the back of that ambulance, keeping my partner alive.
Wow.
And it was crazy, because I thought at that moment, I'm going to lose this friend in my life. Here is somebody that I've admired, I've looked up to, a mentor, and now their life is in my hands.
Mm.
And the reason why it took 15 minutes, which is crazy, is for whatever reason, when I hit our emergency button on my radio, it didn't ping right on the cell towers, so they didn't know where we were. And I was a little too busy to, answer the radio traffic. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, where are they? Like, I need help. But after that accident is when I really started struggling with burnout, PTSD, depression. There were a lot of issues in my life at that time. I, I hate to use the word survivor's guilt because my partner did survive. But I mean, he was in the hospital for a long time. But there was a lot of blame that I placed on myself. A lot of, this was my fault, even though it wasn't. I mean, there was nothing I could have done to avoid the wreck. But at the time, I saw it as, well, man, if I would have driven a different way to the hospital, or if we had stayed on scene for 2 more minutes, I mean, there's 100 different things you struggle with that. And I started to reach out for help. And I think a big problem in public service, and I think it's worldwide, is that there's this stigma of, if you reach out for help, you're weak. And I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And so I did. I reached out. My company at the time didn't have resources. And I was begging, practically begging them, please, I need help. I need someone to talk to. I'm struggling. And the response I kept getting was, well, we'll work on that. It was like, okay.
I have to say, Jonathan, that's strong. Like, your thing, man, resonates with me so much because that is a turning point for me in my career as well. Mine was at about 1.5-ish. I had a female partner of mine that I was working with, and we went to a domestic, dealt with a domestic, and we went to another address where we thought one of the kids who was fighting was living at, was possibly at. Well, one of the kids that actually lived behind where the domestic happened was at this other address. And we went in there, and I went to go arrest him, and he tried to escape. And he looked full on haymakered my partner, my female partner, dented her cheekbone. She fell back, was still conscious. He ran out the door. So it was he was trying to escape. And I saw she was okay. It was still conscious and was fine. But I took off after this guy, caught him in that. But then she ended up leaving the job. And same exact thing, that remorse of what if this, what if that? Why didn't I arrest him harder? Why didn't I just tackle him? Why didn't I just grab all those? So when you were saying that, you were giving me goosebumps because I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And it does. It hits you so hard emotionally. But I want to praise you, man, for sitting there going, I don't know what the time frame difference was, but like for me, I never asked for help until my wife literally was like, "What the fuck is going on with you?" There's incidents where she was bringing it up, and I can think back to it, and it's like it took her having to do that because it was the same thing. I was like, I can't. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. That was not. But I want to praise you for actually forcing and going, I need help. Where can I get help? At least we have EAP, which is a counseling service and stuff here, but. Yeah, man. I just wanted to say because.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure there's so many people out there. There's so many people that are listening to this that have had that same thing, and they're going, "Nah, there's nothing wrong with it." But it's like, and then like you said about the tornado thing, they've come to realize and figure out that PTSD isn't from one incident. It's an accumulative trauma. And
yes.
I always say, I used to be like, oh yeah, dead bodies. They're just dead bodies. They got no connection to them. And yes, they may not affect you as much, but it wears you down over time without you even knowing it, especially if you're not talking about it. You're not talking about those traumatic jobs. But then you have something like happen to you with your partner where there's that emotional connection. The emotional connection throws everything out of the water, and it just, because I don't know about you, and I'd love to know your thoughts on it. But for me, when you have that emotional connection to something, you withdraw even more so you can deal with that situation right then and there.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Coming back, that's the hard part. And nobody's trained on it. Nobody's trained on how to come back from that emotional thing. So, sorry, Jonathan. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, you didn't. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And that's kind of what happened. That day, we both, when when an ambulance actually got there to help us, I will never forget the sense of relief I felt when that door swung open, and actually was another friend of mine named Miles, and he doesn't mind I drop his name. I've already talked to him, but I told him I blame all my problems on him today. But no, he swung open the back of the ambulance, and he saw that I'd already been treating my partner, and he looked at me and he's like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "Get us to the hospital. Like, we're time to go." But that sense of relief, I will never forget him opening that truck, and I see who it is, and I go, "Oh, good. I know you. You're a good medic. You're going to take care of us." And so in the back of the ambulance is when my partner first started regaining consciousness, surprisingly.
Yeah, that is.
And the whole time, the only thing on his mind was, where am I at? Where's my partner? Is he okay? And I'm like sitting there, holding his hand, like, "We're gonna be okay, man. I'm going to the hospital with you. We're both banged up, but we're gonna get through this." And he ended up having 9 facial fractures, open skull fracture, broken ribs. He ended up suffering a stroke from a perforated carotid artery. Just all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
But the overwhelming, after that day, that night, I went home. When I got released from the hospital, I was so drained and so emotionally detached from reality that I went home, and I had 2 roommates at the time. I was sharing a house with 2 other guys. And I went home that night. I said, "Hey, I'm home. I was in an ambulance accident. I'm going to bed." And I slept. I stayed in my bed. I slept for probably like 14, 15 hours. I was just so emotionally drained. And it was hard for me to go up to the hospital to check on my partner, because I that sense of blame, that guilt that you have, and even confronting his own parents, my partner's parents, was just overwhelming. And I'll never forget, his mother hugged me and she said, "It's not your fault. He's here because you helped him." And that was a small ounce towards my recovery with that. But one of the things was, after all of that, I kept asking, "I need help. I need help. I need help." And I wasn't getting it. And I didn't know where to turn.
Jonathan, did you recognize it right away, or did it take time?
The need for help, I would say it was probably about a month or 2 after the incident. I was working again. I was dealing with, not so much flashbacks, if you will, but I was dealing with moments of just sheer terror, where for no other reason my heart rate would skyrocket, and I'd start sweating profusely, and I'm like, "What is wrong with me?" And it's like,
which are a form of flashbacks.
yes, yeah. It was crazy. It's not the visual ones, but I would just sit there and just be like shaking, like I'm sitting on a couch, like what I'm not,
Yeah.
And but I kept looking for help, and I couldn't find it. My company wasn't providing the help that I thought I needed.
Yeah.
And I actually turned to an organization, and I'm not sponsored by them. I get nothing from them, but the Code Green campaign. I highly recommend anybody in fire, police, EMS, or any profession. They are an awesome organization here. They help with PTSD, suicide prevention,
Awesome.
and they're amazing people. And that's who I turned to, and they helped me. What's that?
Who was that again?
Code Green campaign.
Code Green campaign. Just so that everybody has it, anybody that's listening in the US that has it, Code Green campaign. That's a good one, man.
Yeah, they're an amazing organization, and I highly recommend anybody struggling with PTSD. They have counselors, they have crisis people that can help you. I mean, even if you just need to talk, reach out to those guys. They're amazing. And that's what I did. I started getting counseling, but part of the problem that I dealt with for years was talking. And I think the biggest thing with burnout, and what I think burnout is personally, is that it's not just mental. I think it's also physical. I think there is a physical burnout. You know, how many hours are you working? You know, are you working, 6, 7 days in a row, 12-hour shifts because you're trying to do some overtime, get some money for birthday gift or something, or like you mentioned, the mental one I think is the biggest, but the physical burnout, you have to know your limits.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a couple of times I was doing 200 hours in a 2-week period. And I mean, insane. I know, insane. I was pushing myself to the absolute extreme. And I'd come home angry. I'd come home, I wouldn't have even had a bad call, no dead bodies, nothing crazy. And I'd come home angry, and I would be angry at the world. My wife could have done nothing wrong, and I was getting mad, angry at her.
I can relate to that one. I yelled at my wife because she left something in the car at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, it's the dumbest stuff. Yeah. I mean, there were times where she'd look at me. She's like, "You're just being a bear. What did I do to you?" And I'm like, well, you didn't clean the dishes. She's like, "You're the one who used them." Like,
and we have to praise our spouses, our partners, because
man.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you're male. I'm sure that she's done the same thing back at you, and she's been going through stuff and that as well. But the ones closest to you take the brunt of it. They absolutely get nailed by it. And we have to praise it. So, all right. So the emotional. So obviously, you're identifying that you're snappy and things like that. Is this before or after this ambulance crash?
This is after. There was a little bit before, but like you said, it accumulates and it just gets worse and worse and worse. The longer you don't recognize and start dealing with the problem, it's just overbearing in your life.
Yeah.
And this was, at the time, my wife and I were actually just barely dating, which made it so much worse. She is such a gracious person. I'm going to tell you, I don't know how she deals with me or puts up with me, or especially then. But she did, and God bless her for doing it, because man, I couldn't have dealt with myself.
They're strong women, aren't they?
Man, stronger than me. I will admit that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But some of the things that I started noticing is that even though I was getting counseling, which helped, I wasn't even telling my wife at all about the struggles I was dealing with. I was only talking to a therapist. And I thought, well, that's all you have to do. Everything's great. I just talk to my therapist, leave it there, and I'm good.
Did the therapist ever tell you to talk to everyone else?
The therapist did, but being a stubborn guy, I thought, you don't know what you're talking about. How can I tell my wife the demons, if you will, that I'm dealing with every day? And part of that was, well, let me protect her from some of the bad things.
I'm glad you said that, Jonathan, because you have a wife who is, I don't know. Yeah, at the time she was an EMT as well, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you guys are going to the same stuff. You're dealing with the same things, but yet you still don't want to tell her because you don't want to tell her the traumatic things that you've seen and dealt with. I was the exact same way. Didn't want to tell her. I was like, I didn't want to come home and tell her that I just fucking scraped a guy up off the train tracks.
Yeah.
Or just went to a house where the lady's had the shit kicked out of her and 2 black eyes, and that I'm like, but at the end of the day, and this I wanted to ask you about this, about the accident as well. Did anybody debrief with you?
Never. I never got a critical stress debrief. None of us did. My good friend Miles, who was the paramedic that ended up treating both of me and my partner, even so much as about 6-7 months ago, we were talking about it, and we were just talking about it in general passing, and he goes, I still wish we could have done a debrief. I was like, I know, we never did. Now, I will say this, before I go too far, my company did recognize after my accident about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, the need. We had a couple people in some acquaintances of mine at our company that ended up committing suicide.
Yeah.
And no one knew they were going through those problems. And they realized then, we messed up. We need to fix this. And And my company really has stepped up to the plate now, which is good. So I can't bash on my company. You know what I'm saying?
And we're not bashing on, it's all a learning
No.
experience, and different companies have
Yeah.
things, and funding and all that, fun stuff comes into play and all that, and they can only do what they can do, and
Exactly.
we can't dig at them, because at the end of the day we are humans and we have our own choices, and like you did,
Yes.
there's always help out there. So John, let me ask you this, because you've been through a lot of traumatic stuff,
Yeah.
to be honest, you've done a lot of stuff, you didn't have the debriefs, different things, whatever it was, but looking back at what you know now, if you could teach yourself, say 10 years ago, what would it be that you'd actually, that you've learned over that time that you teach yourself, to prevent yourself from going through that again? The actual tools, the things that have worked, that if you had known back then, you would have made sure you implemented in, and to help yourself prevent you from getting where you are, where you got to.
I mean, number one, talk.
Mm.
I feel like, especially if you have a spouse or a partner that you're living with, that is one of the biggest things. No other person on this planet will know you better than the person that you're living with. I mean, the things, I mean, you can, the type of person that can just look at you and go, "You're hungry, aren't you?" It's like, "Oh, how'd you know?" They know you better.
They have superpowers against us. My wife knows when I'm
Yeah.
going to open my mouth and say something stupid, and she'll grab me and be like, "Just don't do it."
Or the arm squeeze. That's what it's talk. You have to talk, especially to someone you love, whoever it is. If you don't have someone that you're, living with, I mean, even if it's a parent or a grandparent or even a close friend, you have to talk. That is the biggest thing. Talk about your problems. I feel like so many people think that it's taboo to talk about PTSD or depression or even suicide. We have to talk, because if you don't, you'll never overcome the problems that you're dealing with.
Now, John, let me ask you this, because I know there's a lot of people out there, you and I've been there already,
Mhm.
that they're like, "Oh, but I don't want to talk to my partner or my parents or whoever it is that they want to talk to about the stuff that I've seen and dealt with, because I don't want to put them through that trauma." What would you say to them?
I would say, first and foremost, not everybody. I mean, yes, there are some people that cannot handle that trauma that that you want to talk. Some people are not able to really handle that. Is it necessary to tell your 89-year-old grandmother, hey, like I said, I just had an old lady yesterday, that burned up in a house fire reaching for the door handle. I mean, probably not the best thing to tell your 89-year-old grandmother, but there is always someone. And my thing is, people, especially people that you love, are stronger than you think they are.
Mm, yeah.
There is that detachment that everyone else has. Like, if I tell you a story of a call I had or an emergency I dealt with, it may be interesting to you, but there's still that detachment of, well, you weren't there,
Yeah.
you weren't a part of it.
But
That
emotional
other person that you're
connection.
talking to,
But
they may not understand everything that you're referring to, or the whole situation, or even know what it's like to even be in public service at all. But listening, they may be able to help you, um, even if it's just to be a shoulder to cry on.
mm,
you know
I
but I
was
think,
gonna say, just by you talking about it, what do you think about, what are your thoughts on this? Just by you talking about it and getting it off your chest actually releases it and
oh
stops
yeah,
bouncing around
yeah.
inside.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you'll drive yourself crazy keeping it inside. And like I said, some people think, well, maybe my spouse, or they know their spouse and say, they cannot handle this, or find a friend. One of the things my company's doing now, which is fantastic, is we have a peer support group, and it's 5 to 6 people that are working in our field. That, hey, I had a bad call. Their phone number is right there listed. Hey, call them up, and they, day or night, if it's 2 in the morning and they're at home sleeping and they answer the phone, what's going on? Talk me through it.
What
You
would
know,
you say on that?
sometimes,
Because I know there's a huge stigma around it, especially still in the States. It's not as bad here, but
Mhm.
it still is in every aspect. And I know that even, my old colleagues that I used to work with were like, oh, watch out, they'll use it against you, blah, blah, blah. And I actually even had a welfare officer say that if they needed to help to get me leave without pay, that there would be a red tick on my file, blah, blah, blah. And so, I'm like, that pissed me off royally when I heard that. I was like, you are kidding me.
it would me too.
I'm the strong motherfucker who's put my hand up saying I need fucking help, and you're telling me that I'm going to be detrimented against it. Okay.
Yeah.
But what would you say to those people that are like, they're living in that fear of, oh, but it might affect my job and things like that? What I love to do. What would you tell them around the whole, actually just going, I need help and I need to talk?
So here's the thing. If, say, you're afraid that your company, your organization, whatever, is going to be an issue, I would say reach out to organizations like the Code Green campaign, because they're not going to talk to your place of work.
Mm.
They're going to keep it to themselves. Your job never has to know that you're seeking help. If that's an issue, if you're truly afraid that it's going to affect your career, reach out to an organization outside of your, try to move yourself away from that. Now, I think a lot of, especially here in the States, there are a lot of organizations that companies, fire departments, police departments, ambulance services that they honestly could care less about the employees,
Mm.
and I think that's a huge problem that we have here. And my suggestion is maybe you need to find somewhere else to work, somewhere that will value their employee. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to that. It's
The one
it's a
thing I
very it's
One thing I tell people is you need to care about yourself more than anyone else. Yes, it's a career, but at the end of the day, if you're not alive to do that career or you're not actually happy doing that career, then what the fuck's the point of the career?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about about that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I actually have written down is it's okay if you have to move on.
Yeah.
It's absolutely okay. I've had friends that were in this line of work for 10 years, and one of them came to me and was like, I want to be a poet. I was like, do it,
Yeah.
become a poet.
Yeah.
Now, I think his poetry is not that great, and if he ever watches this, he can text me and talk to me about it. But I don't think he's that great at it. But hey, you know what? He's following his dream.
Yeah.
And I think people, a lot of people try to find their inner person and their what makes them tick, if you will. And I think a lot of that, especially in my line of work, people think, well, I want to do it to help somebody. I want to help somebody because they're running away from their own problems, thinking if I help more people than my own problems, then I'm bettering myself. When in reality, that's not what you're doing. You're just adding more problems to yourself.
I like that. I like that thinking. I haven't thought about it that way. Because obviously, I'm helping people get into first responding, and everybody says I want to help people, I want to help the community.
Exactly.
And
Everyone,
I go into, well, you need to know your why, because once you know your
yes.
why, then it will power you. It'll get you there. It'll take you through those hard times. Just like I'm sure, and I'll ask you here in a second what yours is, but I'm sure you know your
Mhm.
why and what it's gotten you, it's taking you through all those hard things. And you've gone, I need to find help because I love doing this job because this is why.
Yeah.
So on that, but before I get into that, what would you
Oh
say,
yeah, yeah.
to teams of people? Like I know you'll be part of a team, you'll have supervisors in that, and I'm sure there's going to be supervisors out there that are listening to this, and so we want to give them some advice to help their team because again, we're public servants because we do honestly want to help people. We want to make a better life for people.
Yeah.
We have our deeper whys on it, but at the surface, we do all want to
Yeah.
contribute. What would you say to supervisors in that you've learned that could possibly, they might, be able to use to help somebody that may have been, that they might identify as in your situation?
So if looking at it from the perspective of, say, like someone in charge or a supervisor or even another employee,
Mm.
that is to look for the warning signs of depression and PTSD, because burnout, I think, coincides hand in hand with depression.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that it is absolutely hand in hand to some degree or another. That person that's burned out may have no thoughts of suicide their entire life. That's fine. Not everyone does. But let me tell you, it's hand in hand with depression.
Yeah.
That self-hate or the loathing that they feel towards their job, their environment, or even, and what I've seen at my job is towards patients. Why are you calling me for this mundane problem? I mean, or for police officers, I don't know how many times I've come to a call with my wife and she's sitting there and we're there for an unrelated thing and they'll be saying, well, they stole my cat and their cat's sitting there and the neighbor's like, their cat just walked into my yard. And why did you call us for this? you know? But I think it's recognize for the team focus is to recognize what those warning flags are. Is that person pulling away from everyone? Are they, is their outlook on life very negative? Have they become darker? And I'm not talking about sense of humor because I feel like in public service, we all kind of have a dark sense of humor as a coping mechanism. But
for in the moment, yeah, we've got that coping mechanism. It's a matter of what you do afterwards that I think is
exactly. But I think when I say a darker personality, I'm thinking more along the lines of, is that person always doom and gloom?
Yes.
Is the world always sky always falling? Is the world always coming to an end, regardless of what the day holds? You could have had a fantastic day and they're like, oh, it was just horrible. Why? Look for those warning signs, and not everyone's going to want to talk about them. I mean, you got to recognize that as a team, sometimes people don't recognize their own need.
Yeah.
And it's try to show them, but I say don't be forceful, because then you can completely push that person over the edge.
Yeah.
But try to show them, hey, look, I'm here to help. They'll withdraw.
As I call it, plant those little seeds so that over time they'll sprout up and they'll be like, oh, actually, and that's literally what I'm sure your wife's done, friends have done for you. My wife did for me. She was just constantly like, what's going on? Talk to me. And putting things showing me into my perspective of going, Chris, you're not enjoying what you used to, or Chris, my dad, I remember we went to a dinner party at her dad's place and I sat in the corner and said nothing. She's like, Dad said, making, and, going, Dad said that, you don't seem like yourself. He was like wondering if you're okay. So taking it off of me, because when you're in that dark place, you're sitting there going, oh, they just don't understand. Even to your loved ones, like when she says it as it's somebody else that is seeing it as well, then it's like, oh, well, it's not just her seeing it, and it kind of waters that sprout just a little bit more.
And that's one of the things. Learn those warning signs, especially if you're a supervisor. I think that should be mandatory, honestly, for you to be in a position of leadership, is to know what those are so that you can help your team members.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things, is learn the warning signs. And like you said, try to plant those little seeds of encouragement, or, hey, I'm here for you if you need to talk.
Yeah. I like Chris Kyle used to do, he used to take the guys to the range and stuff, just to do something fun. And then hopefully they opened up and talked about stuff. Yeah, I mean, I used to do some of that stuff with guys as well. And it's What about debriefs? What do you reckon about debriefs?
I think that for a debrief to happen, I think, and how my company does it now, I think is excellent. If I go through a call that I feel like was traumatic to me, I can now say, hey, I need a debrief. And we have one. No questions asked. It's one of those things that I think that debriefs should absolutely be done with your peers, anybody that was on the call. And I think that they are an excellent source of helping walk through the call, because you're not going to, I mean, I'll make up an emergency for you, but I mean, just say you have a dead child and you guys did everything you could to save the kid and you couldn't save the kid. And so you're like, we need a debrief for this. Everybody sits there and you as the medic are sitting there just like, man, I could have done more. I could have done more. I could have done more. But then you have the other person, a supervisor, a police officer that said, hey, no, but you did this, and then you did this, and then you did this. And they go, oh, I forgot I did all that. And they realize that, well, maybe I'm being too hard on myself.
Yeah.
So I think they're an excellent tool.
Yeah. See, well, this is my personal opinion, is that they should be mandatory. Any nasty call.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's not going through every single call, the details of everything, but just having to sit down at the end of the day, just for 10 minutes and going, hey team, how's everybody doing? I know that you went to, as a supervisor, I know you went to that job. Anything come up for you? And also what I feel it would bring back is a lot of that brotherhood, where you,
yeah, absolutely.
You feel you can go to your teammates and go, what's going on here? This and that. So this is why I asked the question about your thoughts on the debrief, because me personally,
I think they're excellent.
Yeah, they are. They're great because it also builds that thing where you actually feel comfortable talking with your peers that you work with.
Mm-hmm. And even if nothing bad happened, it's still a great, like you said, it's still a great way to build that brotherhood. I agree wholeheartedly.
Because it might not be the day that happens. It might even be a month, 2 months, 3 months down the track where it's like, I'm feeling like shit today, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Exactly. Exactly. And that happens. Yeah. But yeah, that's good.
So, okay. So Jonathan, like we touched on a little bit just before, what do you feel like your why is? That thing that kept you going, that made you go, I want help because I want to keep enjoying what I do.
So I think that I struggled for years and years, even after getting professional help, because I didn't realize that I needed to talk. And I think the catalyst, if you will, that pushed me over the edge to realizing what my purpose was, what my why was, if you will, because I used to just because I want to help people. I used the same generic excuse.
Yeah. Well, and you also, when you joined, you're like, oh, I'll just join. Paycheck.
Yeah, it's a job. Yeah.
I'll help people.
Benefits.
And it's a hard slug being a first responder when you join it for that reason, because you get lost, don't you?
Yeah. And you realize real quick that not every emergency is a, hey, I saved a life today, or I made a difference, and you really, you realize, oh man, this is a lot of mundane moments, hours of boredom with moments of sheer terror sprinkled in, every now and then. You know what I mean? It's,
yeah.
But I think the big thing that kind of helped me realize why I want to do what I do and what made me fall in love with my job all over again, honestly, it's going to sound crazy, but when my father got diagnosed with cancer, it was stage 4 cancer, colon cancer, metastasized to his bones, and they gave him 4 months to live. And crazy, out of the blue, we had no warning, and a young man, 59 years old, just out of nowhere. And sitting down with him, he, emergency room doctor, he had done all these years and on an ambulance and all these years as an emergency room doctor, and then just get taken down instantly. And we sat there and I talked to him, and one of my dad's mantras in life, and I love it, and it spurred me to where I am now. But he kept it all through his life. He said, I am a rag picker. And I never really knew what that meant. And he explained that years and years ago, we had a form of recycling where when you'd use a rag, you'd throw it outside. A man would come through, he'd take that stained, destroyed, teared rag to his house, trim it, clean it, repair it, and make it new. Kind of a rebirth of that rag, and then sell it again. And that man was called a rag picker. And my dad gave me a book to read. My family actually gave it to me, and it's Og Mandino's, if anybody's interested. OG, his first name, Mandino, and it's called The Rag Picker. And it's 100 pages. It's a small book. I read it in one sitting, and I don't agree with everything in the book. Don't get me wrong. It's not like my Bible, but it's an excellent view of what I want to be. because I want to look at people as that rag that's been discarded by society, whether it's a patient, whether it's a partner who's dealing with their own demons, whether it's alcoholism or drug abuse, whatever that demon is in their heart and in their life. They're in a dark place. They've been discarded by family. They've been discarded by friends. They've removed themselves from, social gatherings and the norms of life. And I want to be that person that reaches down, picks them up, fixes their problems as best I can't just hit them on the head and say, hey, you're fixed. Where you go? But I want to be that encouragement to them. Hey, let's get out of this funk. Hey, let's move forward with our life. Hey, stop being so hard on yourself. You are a gift. There's no one else on this planet that is exactly like you. No one.
That is awesome.
Out of the 6 billion people here, you are a completely unique and different person, even down to your molecular level. I mean, that's incredible.
That's awesome.
And my goal now is to try to help those in their life, make it a ministry of my life to help people, whether it's to lose weight, whether it's to, whatever goal you want to set. That bettering themselves every day is the biggest thing. And I want to be a part of that, bettering someone else's life, because it helps me personally. I better myself so that I can better someone else's life. Yeah. And that's kind of my purpose in life. It makes me want to strive more to help, especially first responders, because we are so hard on ourselves. We really are, man. Yeah. we really are. But yeah, that's kind of my thing, is to be a rag picker of the discarded people in this planet, people that everybody's given up on.
That's awesome.
I think it's great.
That's epic. And it's interesting because, obviously being myself, ex-law enforcement, your wife's law enforcement, I talked to her, just recently. And, for you, it's EMT. You do it through your channel of being an EMT, and you absolutely love it. And that's awesome. And then, in the future, like you said, it's okay to move on. And in the future, you might be EMT for the rest of your life and be totally like, this is why and this is my channel and this is how I do it. And so that's awesome because, everybody has a different channel. So let me ask you this just real quick.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's unsure of their why?
That's the hardest question you can ask all day. And that really is, because every single person is different than each other. And I think the biggest thing to find your why is strive every single day to better yourself, whether it be push yourself to be better physically, when it comes to, run that extra mile or whatever, or if it's mentally to learn something new every day. Because I feel like if you ever quit trying to figure out who you are and get complacent, you'll never find your why. Never stop looking for it. You may not have, look, I didn't have it when I got into this line of work. I didn't. It was just a job. And it took me years in this line of work to find out who I was and what I wanted to be. And you may not find it right away, but never stop looking for it. Because if you do, you're allowing all those dark spots, all those demons back into your life. And next thing you know, you're sitting there at the bottom of the pit looking up going, how did I get down here? And I think if you always strive to better yourself every single day, whether it's through faith, if you're religious, whether it's through physical exercise, whether it's through meditation, there's so many aspects you can better yourself every single day, even if it's just learning something new, reading a book, getting into poetry, like my friend. Hey, better yourself, whatever it is. But I think the biggest thing is don't get complacent. Don't get lazy. Get off your butt.
Yeah.
Because the minute you start letting yourself get lazy, it's a dark road.
Yeah.
It is.
So Jonathan, what's your number one piece of advice for first responders? What would be your one thing if you met somebody that was just getting into it, or even people that are already into it? What's your one piece of advice that you've learned over your years?
Go into banking. No, I'm kidding. I honestly, I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is two things. And I know you said one. I'm saying two.
Okay.
I'm breaking the rules. You know how it is. My first thought is never lose your fire, your desire. Um, if you know what your purpose is, you know your why. Never lose sight of that. That's
Mm.
the biggest thing. Because the minute, like I said, the minute you lose that desire, that fire, you're going down that dark road. But the second thing for someone that doesn't know, I would say remember to keep yourself, work and home, separate. Well, how do I word this the right way? I'm trying to find the right words. But like keep them separate in two different boxes, but don't be afraid to blend them. And what I mean by that is turn work off when you come home. My wife and I joke sometimes her cop mode is still on when she comes home. And, I'm not talking bad about my wife because she's a much better person than me. But, sometimes, hey, we call them home piles, which is hilarious. So I come home, I just drop my uniform right there. I want out of it. It's gross. And I just drop it. And sometimes I forget to pick it up and throw it in the hamper or in the laundry basket. But sometimes she can come home and be like, hey, what's this? And then she's in that cop mode where she's pointing at it and she's interrogating me. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Turn work off. We're at home.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for someone is to learn when to turn off work, when to turn that off and be home. Spend time with your family. If you're constantly thinking about the what ifs and the worst case scenarios at home, you'll never find peace. You'll never find peace.
I'm glad
That's
you
the
said that,
biggest
Jonathan,
thing.
because it is one of the most important things, and that's one of the reasons we get drained. I feel we get drained so much is because we bring it home and we keep it on.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, I know so many cops are like, oh, I can never switch it off. I'm always seeing the traffic stuff. Yeah, you're gonna see it, but don't fucking think about
Yep.
it.
Here's a fun thing. Actually talking about that one thing, and this is great. So my wife and I will be driving down the road, and I always call her my little rookie because I've been doing it longer than she has, even though I'm not even a cop, which is fun. But we'll be driving down the road, and then we'll see a car, like cut across 3 lanes of traffic, cut somebody off, and just reckless driving. And I'll look at her and I'll go, light it up, rookie. We're gonna get them today. Have fun with it. And I feel like another big thing is learn to have fun, even in your line of work, whatever it is. I mean, even if you're a coroner, have fun.
Yeah.
You learn when it's okay to laugh because it is okay to laugh.
Yeah.
Because if everything is serious, you'll never excel in public service.
And it doesn't even just go for public service, to be perfectly honest. It goes for anybody and everything. You could be a banker, like you said before, and you can still do the same thing. If you're focused on the shit stuff of everything, you're gonna see the shit stuff of everything.
Yeah, why does this guy keep coming in and asking for $5 every day? We have an ATM, whatever it is.
Yeah, instead of going, oh yeah, sweet, I'm gonna give this guy $5 today. I'm gonna put a smile on his face as well.
Exactly.
It's awesome. So I know you and your wife have just started up. I don't know if it's more her or if it's more you or if it's both of you together. You've just started up the Thriving First and
Yes.
pushing that a bit with Instagram and that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So one of the things I noticed, and I know I got to kind of be brief because I know your time's valuable here.
Yeah,
but
it's all good. We got time.
We got time. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed is in my line of work, I work a 24-hour shift, so I'm 24 hours on, 48 hours off if I don't do any overtime, but I can do overtime.
Yeah.
Was that I was eating unhealthy food. I was sitting on my butt. And this is, in the past, I was just so drained, focused on that negativity in life, in the burnout funk. And I gained a whole lot of weight. I mean, I was 350 pounds in the US or 158 kilos.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was very large. And I realized, oh man, this is unhealthy. I'm a ticking time bomb. And so we started Thriving, and it's a weight loss program, but it's also helps with mood stabilization, things like that. But the biggest thing for me was, man, I'm going to lose weight. I ended up losing 110 pounds in like 6 months,
Oh, wow.
ridiculous weight loss. I mean, it was just insane. Um, but the big thing for me is not about selling a weight loss program. I could care less if someone buys it from me. I could care less if somebody buys any of our products, because I think the biggest point of what I like to see from the Thriving page that we have, Thriving First Responders, is that we're there to help people because we've been there. I know what it's like to have those bad calls. I know what it's like to sit there and comfort a mother after dealing with the death of her child, a newborn. And I also know what it's like to be there on the good days too. But we are there to help people. We want people to thrive in their personal lives. And I know Thrive is an organization, it's a brand, but I mean truly in the sense of the word. I want people to excel and thrive in their personal lives. I
Mm,
want them to excel in their family. And then if you're excelling in your personal life and with your family, your job, you're going to excel in that. I mean, truthfully, if home life is good, if family life is good, if you're okay with who you are as a person, you're happy with yourself, you're motivating yourself daily, you're going to be loving your job, no matter what it is. If you work in sewage, you'll love your job.
yeah.
It's just one of those things. And I think that's the biggest thing I want to do. I could care less if someone buys. If no one buys another thing from us ever again, that's fine. I don't care, because it's not about the money to me. I have a full-time job. My wife has a full-time job. I could care less. But I want to see people get help.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to that rag picking, if you will,
Yeah.
that help those people that are hurting, because we are
Yeah.
everywhere. The whole
I love,
planet, we are a hurting planet.
I love that, Jonathan. I love it. So how, if somebody wants to, obviously, yeah, there's the weight loss side of stuff. So if somebody wanting that, but if
Yeah,
somebody wants to, talk with you, get that, pick your mind as such, as I call it, around things, or
absolutely.
have somebody to, to lean on, to, to talk to, which I know is a big part of, your guys' Thrive stuff as well. As you just said, how do they get in touch with you?
So we have our Instagram page is a big thing for us. We don't have a Facebook one yet. We're debating whether to do that soon here or not. But Thriving First on Instagram should be one word.
Yeah.
That's our contact information there, or even reaching out to our email account through that, which is thrivingfirst@gmail.com.
Nice and simple.
And yeah, nice and simple. There's no numbers, there's no crazy letters. It's just the word thriving and then the word first. And then I'm always open if somebody has questions. Somebody wants to email my wife, because I'm not a police officer. I don't know what her daily day, if someone has questions about, like, man, how do you deal with all these like crazy warrants? And I'm not the person to talk to about that. I have no idea.
But
But if
hey,
somebody did want to talk to her,
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah,
And or if it's someone in the fire department or the EMS. I know I didn't really talk much about my fire experience, but I've got 5 years of that as well. I mean, if someone wants to talk about the struggles they deal with, or if they just want to talk,
yeah.
be that shoulder, they can always reach out to us.
Awesome, man. I love it. I love it. Now, the last question that I have, which you've kind of
Yeah.
answered quite a few times, but what's number one? There's for us, we got viewers all around the world, and we got viewers in all sorts of different industries. Because yes, I'm an ex first responder, and I want to, passion on that. But I find that we can learn from everybody in all aspects, and it helps everybody, in all industries. But what's your number one thing that you would tell viewers to help prevent or counter burnout?
Wow, man, I've touched on that like the whole time. I've completely gone off script. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
Uh,
totally. I know you've hit it a lot, but I like to ask the question direct, so that if somebody didn't pick it up through our conversation, they know they're
yeah.
like, oh, that's what it is. Okay, cool. That's what I
So
can
if they
trust.
got tired of looking at my face or hearing my voice, they just fast forward to the end. They get the little
They
golden
could have.
nugget. I get it. That's a good way to look at it.
They could have if
Uh,
they wanted to.
I would say that the biggest thing to prevent burnout is self-love, man. Self-love. Because if you've got an inner focus on yourself, you're focused on making yourself better every day, it's going to help make your relationships better, and that's going to help make your job better. You
Mm,
can't be negative on yourself all the time. Preventing burnout, I mean, we've talked about your need to talk if you've got burnout, your need to decompress, we've touched on all of that, but I think it comes down to making yourself a better person every day, no matter how big or how small.
mm.
And bettering yourself, you'll strive to better your relationships with family and friends. And I think that makes your job that much sweeter when you go to work, because hey, family's good, I'm good, work's good, because you're going to try to make that better as well. I think
Yeah.
those are the biggest things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I preach this all the time. I've actually created like a little pyramid, layered pyramid, and it's like the bottom layer, the biggest, widest foundation layer, you could call it the foundation of the house, is yourself. Because if you're
Yeah,
not taking care of yourself, then you can't take care of anybody else, and you can't take care of work. You can't, it all falls over, and everybody puts work first, and it's so draining.
oh man, no, absolutely. It's got to be self, because if you don't have that self love, or however you want to word it, if you don't nourish yourself, your body's going to die. I mean, it's like anything. If you're constantly feeding someone else that's hungry, but you yourself aren't eating, you're eventually going to die from starvation while they get fat.
Yeah, yeah,
You got to feed yourself before you can feed someone
yeah.
else. But
Well,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you know this as an EMT, even you've got to, when you walk into a situation, you got to go, okay, cool. Is this going to threaten me first? Because if
yep.
it's going to threaten me first, I can't help that person anyways.
Exactly. Are they holding a gun? Okay, I should probably not be here.
Yeah, or oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm here. That person needs medical attention, but that guy over there has a gun and he's threatening everybody. Okay, I think we need to deal with the guy who's threatening everybody first.
Yeah,
We can get
I'll just point my wife that direction, and I'll deal with the third.
awesome. Well, thanks, Jonathan. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's a bit longer episode, everybody, and hopefully you guys have made it through it with us. It's real for me. I was really drawn into it. It was really good. So thanks, Jonathan. You've got a lot of experience between you and your wife. Literally, you guys cover all the bases pretty much when it comes to first.
Everything but military, I think.
I was gonna say we just need a military person in there, and you have
Yeah.
everything covered. But yeah, I want to thank you again for being on and for giving us your insights and being open and vulnerable with us and letting us know about everything. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that have gotten something from this. And yeah, so as always, everyone, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a review, let us know what you thought of everything. You know, New episode comes out New Zealand time Friday, 6 a.m. That's on a Thursday in the U.S. Depending on where you are, depends on the time. But yeah, so we do at least one new episode every week, and we want to hear from you guys who you want us to talk to. Do you prefer that we talk to more, first responders, or do you want to hear more from, entrepreneurs, business people, anybody? Just let us know who you want to hear from. And we'd love to reach out to them. If there's somebody specific that you like, oh, I'd like to hear this person's story, let us know and we'll reach out to them and do our best to get them on here. So again, thank you very much, Jonathan, and we shall talk to everybody very soon. Until next week, peace out, guys. Remember, train hard, test easy, physically and mentally.